The 1980s were a time of unprecedented growth and expansion for the Japanese economy, mostly by doing what America did, but doing it better, faster, and cheaper. The anime industry, by contrast, was spending a fair whack of time doing what other movies had done, and doing it in their own fashion. Likewise, it just so happened that they continued the pattern of doing precisely what had worked out before, but only changing it by degrees. Once again, Yoshiyuki Tomino's mark on the genre can be easily seen all throughout the year of 1980. The transition from year to year was still nebulous, and giant robot shows of the decade were still similar to giant robot shows of the previous decade, with just a little extra edge to them. Starting in February, Invincible Robo Trider G7 flew onto the airwaves. This was a departure from the typical robot show, even if the machine looked like an off-model Daitarn 3. The main character was a 12-year-old who ran his own business after his father is killed in an accident, and it's as much about his exploits at school and the interactions with working-class people as it is about his battles against the Robot Empire. The Robot Empire itself was never really fleshed out, and the characters never really interacted the way that Koji Kabuto or the Combattler team did with their big villains. With no big bads to speak of, the Empire just kind of bailed out, and the final episode is Wada, the main character, graduating up to middle school. It was an odd little bird, but it keeps a regular spot in Super Robot Wars, and it was popular in Italy because aren't they always? Time Bokan dropped in again with Rescue Man, but despite it being extremely popular, it dispensed with the robot fighting. It would become an on and off facet of the series, and not terribly important to our story. The next heavy hitter on the list is Space Emperor God Sigma, and here we have an interesting bout of syncretism. Syncretism is the merging of practices from various schools of thought, and here we see this merger in both mecha anime and in the live-action scene. The two were originally far divergent, but now Sentai and mecha are near inseparable. The transforming combining robot was going to be phased out of anime in the coming years, and the main reason for this was going to be the steady flow of live-action combiners from none other than Super Sentai. But at this point, the two systems were fairly well in the same playing field, even though they would diverge towards the end of the decade. Denjiman was the Sentai of that year, and it didn't do anything particularly special. It featured a transforming robot that would take out the baddie every week without fail. God Sigma took to the stars to defeat the Eldar, not those Eldar, who were trying to steal a weapon that the Earth would use against them in the future, and God Sigma was on hand to defend Jupiter's moon Io from them. Not to put unfair criticism towards it, as it did last for 50 episodes, but it did not do terribly much to advance the genre. Still, its influence is visible in shows like Gravion, which came out much later. That May, Tomino recovered from the apparent failure of Gundam to give life to Space Runaway Ideon. It's a very well-known anime, but it's not for the reasons one might imagine. Space Runaway Ideon is known for producing one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, robot in mecha history, but what people remember it for is its extreme violence. People got sucked into space, gunned down brutally, or smashed to death in their cockpits. Women and children were routinely shot to death or otherwise atomized as the show went on, and considering what the world was at this time, it was something of a shock. Before there was Evangelion, there was Ideon, and it upended the anime world something fierce. The comparisons wouldn't end there, though, as the endings of both series were markedly similar. After the show was cancelled 4 episodes early, the outcry for the remaining episodes was enough to get a pair of films made. One of them chronicled the original run of the series, and the other, Be Invoked, was the ending that fans wanted to an extent. Kill 'em all Tomino rears his wizened head again. While it's worth a watch for the novelty of it all, the series itself doesn't have the staying power that Gundam did, and this is probably because the main machine looked like a GM in long underwear. Following on from that was Space Warrior Baldios. Combining transforming mecha were a dime a dozen in those days, and this was no exception. Evil space folks, check. Hyper-powerful robot, check. Glooming ending, check. Massive destruction, check. Less than interested audience, check. And double check. Baldios gets some love in the Super Robot Wars, but let's be honest, they'll drag out any old thing. The year ended with 2 big mainstays coming back out of the gate, Tetsujin 28 Go and Astro Boy. Both had their more modern premieres in the winter of 1980 and enjoyed well-deserved success. And both ended up in the States afterwards, just like the old days. If there is such a thing as a down year for giant robots, then 1980 could have easily been considered that. However, in short order, there would be a new crop of machines that would shape the way of things to come. One of them, in particular, would garner the lion's share of American airwaves.